One of the things that I have absolutely loved about being a digital nomad in my 40s has been the ability to try out different types of living settings. So, what does that mean? I've lived in 10 countries since 2018. I'm an American. And each of the countries and the cities or towns that I have lived in have been very different from other places that I have gotten to live in the US. Um, and so, sometimes we have these ideas in our head of where it is that we would love to be able to live, or we think that because, you went on a trip to Jamaica and, you stayed at the resort and you're like, God, I could live here all year. um, but going someplace on vacation and certainly living in a resort is way different from having your regular daily life in a particular setting. So, I'm going to explain a little bit about what I mean when I say that I've been able to try out different settings in different cities in different countries. Because this is what I see sometimes online when people talk about wanting to move to a new country. I'm seeing people who are like, okay, I've got to get out of the United States, and I hear you. I hear you. You feel like you need to move. You need to do something different. But they put all their hopes and dreams into one city, one country, one city, one place. And they haven't really given themselves an opportunity to be able to try out different settings in different countries, which is really, I think, is important to do. Um, and it's actually possible. Whereas in the United States, the project of trying to find an apartment or a house to be able to live in um, is much more complicated in the US than it is in other places. To start with, when you go in the United States to go out and find an apartment, you often need your deposit, and they may also ask you for 1 to 3 months of back rent um, as part of your payment. And so, there are things that might complicate it. So if you're lucky enough to just have savings and you can do it, great for you. But for a lot of people, especially now in this economy where people are starting jobs, stopping jobs, they're getting, fired or laid off, and um, people just don't have extra money sitting around as they may have did, let's say 5, 10 years ago. And so people they just don't have that much money. So when I went to Thailand was the first country that I stayed in long term. I stayed in Thailand for about a year. And the rent that I paid in Thailand, I never paid more than about 350 for rent, 350 US dollars for rent for some really beautiful places that I absolutely loved. Um, and they were fully furnished. They came with all the kitchen stuff. Um, they came with, all the bed sheets, and there was a person who cleaned the apartment for me. Basically, I just needed to go out and buy food. Um, I paid the electricity off sometimes, not all, and not in all the places. I paid the electricity, which was probably about $10 a month, if that. Like I don't like I was it 10? I don't even think I paid $10. And then I paid for my phone, which was for cell phone service with unlimited internet. I think I paid maybe $15 a month. That might be a full exaggeration. maybe $15 a month, 1 5, not 50, but 1 5. Um, and so we're kind of, as Americans, we're kind of just used to spending our money on things that are, at least in my opinion, not worth it. Like my idea of what is a nice place to live, vastly different, of what it is that your money is actually going for. Because okay, so when I went to Thailand, and for the most part, when I go to many countries, with the exception of Mexico here, where I live now, um, in Mexico here, then the places that I've lived in, they've come through referral and not necessarily things like Airbnb. But in the other countries that I've been to, I've used Airbnb for the most part. Um, but when I look on Airbnbs in um, in the States, in the US, I'm like, what in the hell? Like some like some of these places, these apartments on Airbnb, it's just like, did y'all even bother to clean this place? Like there's barely a wall in here. It's just full of, stuff. And it's like you can see that people have sort of taken all of their stuff, all their crap, and just sort of like put it to the side and left the place with like, the bed is sunken in the middle. Like you haven't bothered to even update your bed. It's just, even just, there was who knows how many people have been sleeping on that bed over the years. It's just not a nice place. And then the fee to be in it, like some of y'all are just really, y'all are bold on the price and on some of these places. And I'm just like, wow, I don't deal with that in other countries. Now, mind you, I don't have not used, the only place I've been disappointed with Airbnbs is on the continent of Africa. And we can probably say that for a lot of my friends who are like, oh, we're just gonna go to pick a country. I don't care what country. Pick a country. They go on there and they're like, the picture looks a certain way, then they get there and it's some other bullshit. But I just think that that's because in a lot of ways, folks are just not ready to be able to use Airbnb in that way. And so there are other ways to find some really beautiful places to be able to stay. I'm not saying that there are no beautiful places to stay on the continent of Africa. There certainly are beautiful places. But oftentimes Airbnb is just not the place to be able to go, choosing a place to be able to stay. Um, but back to my point of the video is that it's nice to be able to try out certain settings when you go overseas before you decide, okay, I have my heart set on going to this X country and I'm going to stay there for X number of years. Because, I see people, they'll buy their house, they have a little nest egg, they, they're spending money on taking all of their IKEA furniture to go to this new country. And I'm like, it's in a lot of ways, it's not even necessary. And then they get to the country and they're like, well, this isn't really what I thought it was going to be. Um, and so I just wanted to give you a little bit of information to help you make a better choice. Information to better choice. Because you have the fantasy of what a particular place might look like. And then there's, the real deal of it. So we'll start off with living in a beach or a coastal town. Like right now, I live in Playa del Carmen in the Yucatan in Mexico. It's a lovely town. And when people think about living in a beach city, they think, oh, it's great weather all the time. It's always summer. Everything is an ocean view. Um, I get to go and relax by the water, and it's nice to be able to have all this beach time, right? Well, let me tell you, like we are in August. It is August 2026, and it is the height uh of the heat wave, right? Very high humidity. Right now, it's not a lot of tourism, but that's more so because of the seaweed issue. Um, and then, at certain times it'll be rainy, so you get a little bit of a reprieve from the oppressive heat, um, but not all the time. And so I spend a lot of time indoors during this season. I haven't even touched the beach. It's too damn hot. It's entirely too damn hot. And sure, you can go there, you can go to the beach, and you can, bring your own umbrella. But I'm not carrying all that. Like I'm not carrying all of that stuff with me to the beach. Like it feels like the beach here in Playa del Carmen feels more like it's created for the comfort of tourists and not necessarily people who live here. Now, compare that to the experience of living at the beach in Da Nang in Vietnam, which is in central Vietnam, or even Hoi An, either one of those places. I've stated. I went back and forth for almost a good year. Absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was yeah, during this time, like the summer months, it was still very much a high humidity. Um, but there were places to be able to go and get out of the sun. You pay a very small fee. There were places where there was like what would you call it? Like a paillote, or that's in French. Like umbrellas, spaces where you can go in, and they had, these wooden chairs these wooden lounge chairs, and you bring your towel and you can put your stuff there. And you can sort of, leave your bags there, and there was somebody, an attendant there to watch, make sure that your stuff wasn't getting stolen. Not, that folks there don't really steal. You sure as fuck can't do that here, here in Playa del Carmen. You got to watch your stuff. Um, but in Da Nang and Hoi An, you can put your stuff down and you can go out to the beach, and you can enjoy it for as long as you want to be in the water. You come back, all your stuff is still there. You can get yourself a nice coconut. Um, and if you want to order some food, you can order food from like Uber Eats, or it's called Grab there. But you can order food, or bring your food, and it was just a really nice day. On the days when you don't want to walk on the beach, you can just sort of walk along the road, and so you can enjoy the view of the beach. Um, you can enjoy the view of the beach, and without having to get all sandy. You can just sort of stand back, and plus there was also mountains, so it was nice to be able to have that sort of an experience where you can walk down the street in the shade and enjoy the view of the beach without necessarily having to be on the beach. Here in Playa del Carmen, it's either you get on the beach or you just don't get any beach views at all, because they've built up so much um, of the properties of buildings, concrete buildings, um, hotels, and the restaurants. You can't you can't see it. There really is no sea breeze here. So I don't like it for that reason. Um, but many people have this sort of fantasy that when they come here, it's going to be, you know, this grand beach adventure every single day. And there are some people who do enjoy living here. Um, I just personally do not. Um, so you got to find other reasons to be able to be here if you want to be able to enjoy the town. Um, So it's like you got to be able to ask yourself, if you love a beach town, are you going to love the fact that certain times of the year is going to be astronomically hot? Like, like it doesn't make sense. Like even today, I went outside. I left at about 9:30 in the morning to go to a small market that's about maybe, I don't know, 20-minute walk at the most from where I live. Oh, I was so dehydrated by the time I got there. I actually went with the thinking that I was going to go there, pick up some stuff for dinner and then come home right quick to be able to make my breakfast. I was so dehydrated and hot that I was like, I need to be able to sit down and refuel myself. So I went to a small restaurant that's across the street from the place, and had to eat some chilaquiles. Chilaquiles has actually grown on me, which is a plate of fried tortilla chips or baked. And they like soak it in a green or a red salsa, and they'll serve it with beans. Um, they might put some lettuce on there, some kind of a cheese. Um, what else? They'll put an egg on there. And if you want, you can add like chicken and or something else to it. And then of course like a bottle of water because it's too much for me. It's too much. Um, and it's astronomically hot for like 6 months out of the year. And I think today, like it's so hot that they said it's like it might be somewhere in the 90s. That might be the actual temperature, but it feels like it's 108 degrees. Like I said, astronomically hot. And so you got to know if you like that, like this. Do you want to deal with that 6 months out of the year? And then for the other 6 months, it's like it gets so cool that you don't even want to be bothered with going into the ocean. At least for me. For some people, it is. They when it's colder outside, they don't mind going to the beach and getting in the water. For me personally, I don't like it. Once it gets under a certain temperature, it's too cold. I don't even want to be bothered. Um, but do you like is that what you want? Is that the sort of beach life that you want? And then of course there are other beach places. I haven't been to, of course, every beach in the world. But beaches have winter time. It might snow in a particular city or a town beach town that you want to be able to go to. Um, you got to think about those things. So, you have the fantasy of, laying out in a bikini all year and, just having access to all of these nice places. Um, but it might look entirely different once you're there during specific times of the year. And like, even like some places here, or certain apartments might have like a rooftop where you can, a place where for you to enjoy a rooftop. And a rooftop top is nice, right? And it might even have a pool. Now, some places have the pool is absolutely immaculate. They keep the place nice. Um, but and the pools also tend to be quite tiny. Um, but and having a rooftop view can be very nice to be able to have. But when you look at all of the other rooftops that are surrounding the very nice rooftop that you happen to be sitting on, and whether it's a hotel or your condominium or whatever, a lot of them are just not kept well. And so it's like overrun with mold, or people will use their rooftops as a place to put, their extra construction stuff that they were using to be able to build the building. And it kind of ruins the view. That's how I feel. It may not be, it may not be a thing for you, but I wouldn't know that unless I came here. So that's why it's important. like what I'm saying, or what I'm complaining about, really, are those are my personal opinions. You may feel a totally different way once you come here and you get to experience it for yourself. So, which is why I suggest that people always um, take some time to be able to visit a place in different seasons, different times of the year, to see if you enjoy it before you pack up. Before I just need to get the hell out of America. Take some time to be able to figure out what type of a place you actually want to live in, and live like a local. Don't just show up and say, I'm going to um, the resort, which is wonderful. If you want to do a resort vacation, absolutely do you. Um, but know and understand that that resort experience is not going to be the same as getting up and living there like a local person. What else do you need to be able to figure out? People have fantasies about, I want to go and spend my summers in Europe. I have about um, one of my big dreams was always to go and spend a summer in large European cities, and I still do. That's something that I have not done. I've been to Turkey and Istanbul, and I got there at the tail end of summer and had a beautiful time. Loved it. Wouldn't necessarily want to live in Istanbul, but I had a wonderful time while I was there. I was there for 3 months. I did like the last tail end of summer, and then it went into like a fall-ish, and then when I was leaving, it got downright freezing cold. I was like, oh, I got to go. So I like living permanently in Europe. I don't think would ever be my thing. I would go there, and I would stay for a couple weeks to a month, and then go to a different city. However, if you watch on the news, you'll see that Europe is all over Europe is going through some type of a heat wave, as in many other parts of the world. And many of the apartments that are there, they don't have air conditioning the way that we are used to in the United States. And they just don't have the wiring to be able to put in the air conditioning. And then many of the apartments that people live in, um, you got to walk up. So in the dead of the heat of the summer, you've got to walk up and down 5 flights of steps to be able to enjoy your apartment. And then you get to your apartment and you can't even get, some AC going. Is that something that you want to do in the summer? And then depending on the city that you go in, I think it's Paris. From what I've been told, because I haven't been there yet, outside of the airport, they say, it's like kind of gray. Or London. London is gray a lot of the time. And then in Paris, it's not all. There are months where it is sunny, but it's not as sunny as they would like it to be. Is that where you want to live all the time? You got to think about that. The apartments tend to be small, and so if you're a person who like needs a large kitchen, you might be frustrated by a small kitchen in a huge European city. I like to watch. I can't remember her name, but she's a young lady who has a channel. She's an American who is married to or dating or living with a gentleman who is French, and they have like this little cart, one of those street carts, and it's absolutely adorable. They sell coffee and pastries because the young lady is a trained pastry chef. And of course, she makes all the pastries from her apartment. So her channel actually shows her making some of these pastries as well as other things that she makes. And she doesn't have like a traditional oven. She makes do with one of those little boxes of an oven. It's absolutely adorable. I can't wait to have one when I move out of the place that I live in. Because I actually think that that's really smart. If it's just you or two people, or you or a couple, I think they're absolutely beautiful. Um, rather than using a whole big oven. Like, do you even need to use up the space for that? But her kitchen doesn't have, one of those traditional things. And so she puts it on the countertop. She uses this really tiny table, which also doubles as a place for them to be able to eat their dinner, as a prep table for her to be able to make her pastries. And it's absolutely adorable. And it's very well put together. Of course, is for the aesthetic of YouTube, but they are making it work. They look very happy. The channel does well, so that, I'm not mad at them. But you got to be able to figure out, is this the type of a place that you want to live in? Depending on the city, rents tend to be high. Certainly in Paris and London. Maybe if you go to some place like a Prague or I don't know, Prague or um, I don't know, some other European city that I can't think of right now. Um, those places might be a little bit cheaper, but the more popular big European cities are going to be very high. You probably be spending almost as much as you would in the United States. So you got to ask yourself, do you like living in small spaces? The cities tend to be crowded during those summer months because people want to go and they want to have their European city fantasy too. So, you're going outside to the grocery store, just walking down the streets, it's going to be very crowded. Is that what you want to live in 24/7? If you think about the fantasy of living in a rural and farm setting, and the vision you might have in your head is, oh, that it's going to be so peaceful. I get to grow my own food. I get to wake up to the sounds of nature in the morning, and then I get to go to sleep at night. And when the sun goes down, and it's a beautiful life until the boredom sits in, until you realize how hard it is to actually grow your own food. Not that it's not a worthwhile pursuit, because it most certainly is. But do you have the type of a lifestyle where you're willing to sacrifice a lot of your day and time to be able to do it? Because it is work. Growing food is work. Or are you going to find a way to be able to make it work, like you hire people to work with you? Or are you going to turn that sort of lifestyle into a business? But even then, you still have to know. Like, I wouldn't suggest going out and buying a farm sight unseen and just saying, I'm just going to make this rock, because you just can't. You got to try it out. You got to try it out. So think about, if you want to do a rural farm setting, are you into doing hard physical labor? Do you like living in isolation most of the time? Do you like bugs? Because there's always going to be a lot of bugs. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're living in a place that's dirty, but bugs are in natural spaces. That's just where they exist. If you wanted to go to, I don't know, a Walmart, are you willing to get in the car and drive 30 minutes to an hour away to be able to get to things like a Walmart or to basic medical care? And sometimes in some places, not everywhere, but a lot of times rural places don't have settings for reliable internet. And so a lot of the things that you would like to be able to have while you're living in a more isolated space, you got to think about, like, are you willing to fix things on, for yourself? If you're renting a farm space, is there someone to call when things break down, or are you going to be expected to fix those things on your own? Um, I've lived in a more rural setting before. I've explained before here on this channel, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in my early 20s. And yeah, it's different, child. It's a different type of a lifestyle. Um, even now, and even now, I would say I went to um, Oaxaca here in Mexico for a couple of weeks, and I stayed in a place that was it wasn't terribly far, but it was far enough. And I was like, oh my God, I can't do that. I, I can't do this. I wasn't interested. It looks beautiful in the pictures. It may even be nice for a nice vacation every once in a while if you just want to get away for 3 or 4 days. Um, but what I didn't like about it was transportation. I don't want to be bothered with a car. I just don't. I don't want to be bothered with a car. So in order to get around, you have to use local transportation, which means that you got to go outside and you got to stand on dirt roads and you wait for a collective, what they call a collectivo, which in that area is taxis, shared taxis. So you get in the taxi with 3 or 4 other people, and they have certain places along main, there's major routes where they have certain stops, and you pay to be able to get to a certain spot. I don't have time for that. You got to stand outside. The roads are dirt roads, red dusty roads. And when I want to be able to go someplace, I just want to be able to go and come back. Preferably, I want to be able to walk. But the things that were in walking distance to me, what I had in Oaxaca, um, it just wasn't enough for what it is that I'm used to. They were very, tiny stores. Um, and it was actually quite nice to be able to have stores that they would get, a few things fresh from their farm and they would sell it. They would just, like a pile of lettuce, because they just pulled that from their farm. So there would be a pile of lettuce or, a pile of papayas. But it was only like 2 or 3 items. It wasn't like a full on market or even a grocery store. Um, and then there were just days where they just didn't have anything. They didn't pull anything from the farm, so there was nothing to sell. And I like to be able to buy food every day. I like to be able to go and get fresh food every day. So I need the convenience of a smaller town where um, where I can just go to a store, I can go to the market. I can expect for the market to have certain basic items when I want to be able to purchase them, right? But again, all of this is my opinion. But I'm saying again, you need to be able to figure out what it is that you like. And the only way for you to be able to know what you like is to actually go to the place and experience it for yourself. Lastly is, mega cities. The fantasy is the high, fast pace, going to all the nice restaurants and being around people who are business and career forward, right? Which is really nice to be around. And at one point, I thought that I wanted that. Like I needed to be around people who, had big businesses and they were making big money. Until you get there, you're just like, I can't even do this. Now, I've been to Dubai a couple of times. Dubai is a wonderful place. I love it. Like if you want to go and get your shopping on, go to Dubai. But for me, outside of doing shopping, Dubai has a feeling of being stale. It wasn't a lot going on. However, I had friends there who had jobs. They were teachers. Some people were working in like the finance industry. And then there were people who had small businesses and they were locked into a community of people who did similar things, no matter what they were doing. And they loved it. They loved that energy. Absolutely loved that energy. Um, but they also have lives where they have to do long commutes. So you need a car. You need a car in Dubai. Or you can choose to Uber yourself everywhere. Um, but that's a cost. Like if you want to spend $50 a day on Ubers, by all means, you can do that. Um, it tends to be, the hustle and bustle of the place, and I think the hustle and the bustle depends on the time of year. That can tend to be high stress. Um, I don't know, but a lot of bigger cities tend to be more polluted. Like if you're doing a Mexico City, people complain about, the pollution. They go in the house, they feel like they can't breathe, or they're like coated with some sort of dust just from being outside. And it could just, no matter what the large city is, it can feel like just a real sensory overload, for some people. For some people. And then there are some people who are just really energetic about a larger city. You have access to all of the museums, bookstores. That's what I really miss. I miss having access to beautiful bookstores. Like I really wish that I can just go to a Barnes and Noble or like a really nice independent bookstore. There was a place that I used to go to in Washington, D.C., in DuPont Circle. It was just, I don't even remember the name of the place, but it was a couple, there was a few places, but there's one that I was thinking about in DuPont Circle where it was a restaurant and bar slash a large bookstore. And, you could sit down and look through the books, and you can take a book and, go and get yourself a good sandwich, and the food was good. Like, hear me, like this wasn't, a quick sandwich and, you can get out. Like the food was delicious, you know. Sometimes I do miss things like that. And once I'm able to move to the city that I want to go to in central Mexico, I don't necessarily feel like I want to live in Mexico City, but I do want to be able to have access to it sometimes. And so I would be able to just take a bus to Mexico City when I want to do Mexico City things like the museums and the restaurants, or going to like a high tea at the Ritz, or that sort of stuff. The stuff that you really can't, I can't. They don't really do those things here in Playa del Carmen. It's more of it's just not that type of a vibe here. I'll just say that. So you just got to know what it is that you want, and the only way that you're going to know what you want is if you get up and you go experience it for yourself. Um, so that was what I wanted to share. If there's a place that you were thinking about going to, please go and visit several times before you just pack up and just say, we're just going to show up. Um, you know, be open to the fact that the first place that you go to may not be the best place for you. And that's okay. Don't feel like you failed because you go to a place and you feel like, I don't really feel like this is a fit for me. It's okay. Like you can move on to other places. It's really is a different mindset um, that I don't think a lot of people get. It's a switch in the mindset about being able to move from one city, one country to another, and being okay with that kind of a lifestyle. Because some people, they want to go and they think, oh, I'm going to move here, and they've settled and they brought the whole family. And when it doesn't, they don't feel like it's working out in the way that they want it to. Then they feel like their lives are in shambles. And it's really not. You just haven't discovered the place that works best for you. And that's all. So if you like this sort of a conversation, I would love for you to check out my Substack. Sign up for my Substack and you can hear from me every week. It's called Wealthy, Wise, and Whole. I share essays and my thoughts about, what I'm doing in my life, about traveling, about what life looks like in midlife as a divorced woman who travels the world, the divorced and single person that travels the world. I rarely ever call myself a divorced person, but I just wanted to share that just in case that speaks to somebody who's like you're feeling like you can't move someplace or you can't restart because you're divorced, you can certainly start over. I don't know why. Something told me that I needed to say that today. But you can start your life over. It's possible for you to start your life over. I've started my life over many times, and I'm 49 years old. I'll be 50 years old next year, and I'm very excited. I'm very much looking forward to turning 50. Um, but yes, my Substack is called Wealthy, Wise, and Whole. You can find it at halana.substack.com. For people who are paid subscribers, you get access to my weekly journaling prompts. And on my journaling prompts, I ask you really juicy journaling questions um, about your life, how it is that you want to plan your life. Like I shared here today, what are you thinking about? What makes you excited? You need time to be able to sit down and think about how it is that you're planning your life and what it is that you want. Especially if you've had a life, like if you've had a lot of disruption in the last few years, like the divorce, like your kids have moved on, you've suffered a loss of job, maybe you've lost a loved one, and you're trying to figure out what you're doing next. Journaling is a great way to be able to help you to move through your thoughts and your feelings about what it is that you're experiencing so that you can make room in your brain for a new plan, something for you to look forward to. And in doing that, I've done that myself. I've always used journaling as a way to be able to make room in my head. And I've been able to start a business. I have a writing business. I've lost 100 pounds. Um, I have, um, lived in 10 countries since 2018, and a whole host of things, a whole host of things. And you can do that and a lot more if you want to. So go to the link, halana.substack.com. You'll find it in the description box and also in the comments section. And also, please like this video. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. If you've gotten this far, subscribe to the video so that you can get updates because I am working my way towards monetizing the channel. And I need to do that before the end of the year. So thank you so much. Peace.